Well, thank you all for coming here to listen to this message. I really appreciate you taking your time to do this. My name is Susan Rawlings, and I have been researching UFO and extraterrestrial presence on the Earth for a very long time. It's something I'm very passionate about. I would walk away from everything else I do to be able to do this if I could earn a living at it. But there's been so much exciting news surrounding this now, and things really seem to be heating up. The most important thing about all of this is, well, our government in the United States especially has been covering this up for decades, bottom line. I think we're all aware of that. But the most important thing about all of this is how disclosing the truth about what has been going on for so long all over the world in numerous cultures will impact humanity, and it's very exciting. I just gave this presentation 3 weeks ago, and there's been so much evolving that in 3 weeks' time this has already changed even more. So it's just so much coming in. But I do feel that humanity is coming to a crossroads of the choice towards enlightenment, or we can go the other path of self-destruction. It's obvious what's happening, but I believe from what I can see that we're going to make it to enlightenment. I really think this is going to happen because of what I do for a living as a professional medium. I spend a lot of time going into the future. I do it on a daily basis every day, you know, for numerous people that come through. And what I see is not this global destruction. I just don't see that. I see wonderful things unfolding for this planet and humanity. I don't see the gloom and doom and corrupt being in power any longer. And I just believe that this is a really exciting time to be on the earth as a human being, and we need to go along for the ride because I think it's going to be really exciting. And I think this is our chance to step up to the plate and start taking responsibility for our destiny and the care of this planet rather than leaving it into the hands of corruption. We have to be the ones to do this. I believe that extraterrestrial contacts for the majority are benevolent. You know, you do hear some negative things here and there, but I'm talking from my own experience, and the experiences that I've had have all been very benevolent, and they're all peaceful, they're loving, and I just see that they want to help us with our spiritual evolution. And I believe that showing extraterrestrials a peaceful side of humanity could have a major part in our new world, in our new existence. And so many contactees have reported incredible spiritual awakenings from their experiences. And so again, you know, we do have those who like to talk about the negative or think about the negative, but I think we need to focus on the positive. That's just my take on this. I believe disclosure of the truth about all of this, government disclosure of the truth about this, could lead us to world peace, movement towards world peace, spiritual evolution for humanity, environmental cleanup, release of advanced technology that already exists, and that would eliminate the dependence on fossil fuel that we have and are warring over. Elimination of poverty, eventually prejudice, and language barriers. Language barriers is a good one because they all communicate telepathically. And when you communicate telepathically, there are no language barriers. And think of what we could accomplish if we all understood each other. That would just be tremendous as far as I'm concerned. Also, I think incredible medical advances and advances in space travel. And probably the most important thing about all this is elimination of the corruption, elimination of all of this. I mean, it's obvious. There's no denying the corruption any longer. It's just in our faces every day. And when I say this, I'm not at all implying that every world leader or politician is corrupt, because that is not true at all. There are some that are on the inside trying to fight for this information to come out. And they're putting their reputations and their careers, and some of them even their lives, and the lives of their family on the line to be able to get this information to us. So when I talk about politics, I'm not implying that every person involved in government or politics it's a bad thing. I don't mean that at all, because there are some wonderful people involved that are really putting their neck on the line to help us get this information out. What seems to be happening on the inside politically is there seems to be a great deal of tension between those who want to disclose as much of the truth as possible and those who want to keep it suppressed. They don't want anything to leak out because it could undermine the current religious, political, and social status quo of the economy. You know, they want to keep things the way that they are, but the way that things are just don't seem to be working any longer. So I think this is, again, this is going to be a really exciting time to watch all of this unfold. This really has all been playing out since the days of the Truman administration, possibly even before then. But I go back to the Truman administration, even somewhat back to Roswell. But it really feels like the Truman administration seems to be one of those critical points. I will be talking today about right now, this is really important, right now, as I speak, we are being prepared for disclosure of the truth. We are being prepared for this. In my opinion, I believe it will probably happen sooner rather than later. And if you look in the media and the news, there's just so much coming out now that it just can't be denied any longer. I'll also be touching on covert black budget government organizations and why they've been covering up this presence for years, existing technology that could save the environment and why it hasn't been released, the most exciting and recent UFO news, and I just had to get little tidbits here and there because there's so much of it I can't even begin to scratch the surface in an hour or so. I'll also be talking about some incredible messages that have been encoded for us in crop circles and crop formations, and how disclosure of the truth will help humanity. And I've got some great footage from the skies around the world that I'll be showing and sharing with you guys, so it's really cool stuff. My telepathic communications and experiences with extraterrestrials, again, have all been very spiritual, loving, and positive. And I've never actually seen a complete physical manifestation of a craft, but I have seen really unusual lights in the sky, orbs, but I haven't actually seen a complete physical manifestation of a craft. In October of 2006, my husband and I had the incredible experience of taking the Ambassadors of the Universe training through the CSETI organization with Dr. Stephen Greer, and I'll be talking a lot about him because he is a huge key person in this movement. He's huge. Are you guys familiar with the CSETI program? Yeah, some of you. Well, CSETI stands for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And what the Ambassadors of the Universe training was about was teaching a group of about 30 of us how to communicate telepathically and also vector in spacecraft. And it was one of the most humbling experiences I think I've ever had in my life. It was overwhelming, it was humbling, but at no time did I ever feel threatened by any otherworldly presence. It was humbling and overwhelming, and it was exciting. But what we would do is Dr. Greer during the day would teach us advanced meditation techniques and remote viewing techniques. Remote viewing is a scientifically proven method to transcend time and space, to psychically view anything past, present, or future on or off planet. And it was developed in the Stargate program by the United States government. And the reason why he taught us, I had already taken some remote viewing and knew about it, but it was more from a military approach. And Dr. Greer approached it more in a spiritual way, and it was really awesome. But the reason why he had us remote view is what we would do is after we would have our day lesson, we would all take like a 2-hour break, and we would meditate. I've never spent so much time in meditation in my life. By the end of the week, I thought if I had to meditate for one more minute, I was going to go crazy. But anyways, we would meditate and then we would remote view our evening. And the reason why we would do that is so that we could see what time to look in the sky or what direction or where, and kind of have a feel for what was going on. And then we would meet back at Dr. Greer's house, and from the time that it got dark until sometimes 2-3 o'clock in the morning, we would sit out there and do the vectoring and do the communications. And I'm telling you, there were things that happened out there that I can't even begin to put words to. Usually right before anything would happen, the animals, because we were up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and so there were farms around and there were wildlife, and then, you know, dogs barking because there were houses and things in the valley. But usually before anything major would happen, the animals in the valley would just start going nuts. I mean, and sometimes we would hear these cracking noises that were so loud, it almost sounded like tree branches cracking. I mean, it was, I don't even know what it was, but I believe it was part of the process. Things would happen so quickly that we had a hard time catching anything on film. I do have a small clip of something that the camera caught through the infrared. And it just happened real quickly in the dark in our circle, and it was something that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. But what would happen before, again, we would really be tipped off by the animals, and sometimes the animals would start getting so hyped up that Dr. Greer would have us telepathically connect with the animals to calm them down, and it totally worked. It was awesome. They would just, you know, we would all just do that, and they would calm down. At different times, there were incredible, huge, bright colored orbs that would come out of the sky that would just light up the entire sky, teal colored, amber colored, and it would just come so quickly. And when those things happened, we all felt such a sense of joy and excitement and love, and it was just, again, it's really hard to even put words to it. Another thing that happened one night, all of us, we were packing our camera equipment up, those that had equipment, and most of the group had already left, and there were a handful of us there packing up our equipment, and we could see it was almost like an energetic field of a craft, but there was nothing there. It was almost like it was invisible, but you could see the energetic form around it. So it was almost cloaking itself invisibly. It was right in the yard. And we could see, literally, I know this might sound a little far-fetched, but we did experience this. We could see the outline of almost like bodies approaching us and, you know, like moving around, but there was nothing there. I mean, it was invisible. You could only just see the energetic form. So that was another interesting thing that happened. One of the reasons I believe that we didn't have more activity, because the CSETI groups, they have actually had landings. They've had CE5 contact. But Dr. Greer's watched 24/7, and the entire time that we were out there, we were being circled by military choppers. Some of the people in our group on our break, they would be harassed, you know, the choppers flying really low. One guy was a 9/11 survivor, and he was harassed right in the Best Buy parking lot. They were swooping down low, and I think maybe the reason he was targeted was because he was getting ready to start talking extensively about what really he thought happened that day. So he was really a target of that. So none of the otherworldly experiences ever felt uncomfortable to us. It was the human aspect of it. Go figure. But it was the human military aspect of it that, you know, had people baffled, and I really think that we could have gotten a lot more contact. But he did teach us the protocols in hopes that we would go home and gather groups and work on these things ourselves. And some of the people that have done this have had the most extraordinary experiences. So that was our CSETI experience. Let me just show you a slide. Hold on just a second. This is, oh, sorry. Here we go. You can see it right in the middle of the circle come through. Right. Could you see that? But there were all kinds of those things that we picked up on the camera. And also at unusual times, like my husband has significant numbers that are, you know, they stand out to him on a regular basis. And they would show up on the camera count at those times that were special numbers for him. And this happened twice within like less than a second, because you can get the time frames on there. So we really felt like it was something, you know, paranormal or going on, something more unusual. For many years, so many people that have had experiences, abduction experiences, have reported terrifying experiences. And when I talk about this, I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody who's had a negative experience, because I believe these experiences are very, very real. What's been happening, though, is many witnesses have been coming forward, not only abductees, but military witnesses. And the abductees, many of them are saying, with the more terrifying experiences, that they're not only seeing extraterrestrial, but they're also seeing humans dressed in military attire along with these experiences. And this is a reoccurring theme over and over again, even as far back as one of the most far back documented cases extensively, the Betty and Barney Hill case. They talk about that. And there have been people, military officials, that have been witnesses that have come forward and talked about flying and working on alien reproduction vehicles. They call them ARVs. And our government does have these. And they also talk about they talk about being involved in participating in abduction squads, and there's a lot of information out there now that's published about this. One of probably the most significant books about this is called MILABS, M-I-L-A-B-S, MILABS. I think it's out of print. It's kind of hard to find, but if you're interested in it, you can poke around on the internet. I'm sure you could find a copy of it. I personally met a witness who was related to the top political family in the United States, and that's probably why she's still alive today, because she's a huge advocate for this, and they have roughed her up, but it's because of her relation to this family is probably why she's still alive. But she's actually seen some of these reproduction vehicles, and some of these, almost like they make like these robots or to look like extraterrestrials, and she's actually seen those too. And she said from a distance, you know, they can pass as that, but up close they look really bad. So, you know, there are people who are coming forward talking about these things too. So I would like to point out that when I talk about covert projects, what happens with these people who are recruited in these projects? A lot of them, they're just people like you and I. You know, they have no idea what they're being recruited into. And they, you know, they have no control over what their assignment is. They just have to do their job, you know. So what seems to be happening is a lot of these people, once they figure out what's going on, they're very upset about it, and they want to come forward and start talking about it. The ETs that I've had telepathic communication with have been like very special friends to me, and they are pulling for us to evolve spiritually and break away from this corruption. I've seen clips of missiles being shot at their spacecraft when they enter the Earth atmosphere. And I believe that answers the age-old question that keeps coming up over and over again: why don't they land on the White House lawn? You hear that over and over again. Well, it's not safe. You know, they're being shot at. It isn't safe for them, unfortunately. So it's time for everyone to educate themselves about what's going on and show the extraterrestrials a more peaceful side for us, because we may never get all of the answers from a government source. We may never. And this corruption is obviously being done by those who view these extraterrestrials as a threat to their power and control, because they're so much more spiritually and technologically advanced than we are. So it, you know, it poses a threat to that power. Some really incredible events that have been happening in the news. Just this year alone, in the United States, UFO sightings have increased 700 to 800% just in the short year that we've had. And it just, to me, feels like we're building up to something which is, you know, disclosure related. We've definitely turned a corner in the way that mainstream media handles this topic. Before, in the media, if it even did get any attention at all, a lot of it was ridicule-based, and they would focus mostly on the debunkers. And what seems to be happening now is that shows like CNN, you know, Good Morning America, Larry King Live is a good one. It's just endless, but they're actually talking about this open-mindedly, and so that's another reason that I think that we're building up to this. What in the United States and other countries, it's not so hard for them to talk about this openly. It just seems to be a problem here in the United States, and what's happening is I think the United States is being forced to catch up. So that's why we're seeing more and more of this coming out. What also is going on is that if the United States government does not reveal what they know, other countries such as China or Canada may, within the next few years, be coming forward and talking about this and letting the world know. Once one country does it, you know, it's a global thing. But it's just getting obvious that it's harder and harder to suppress the truth. It just can't be suppressed any longer because there's so much of it out there. In California and San Diego early this year, there were 9 UFOs that appeared to be flying in formation. Many people in the city saw them. Now the excuse on the news was that they were these Chinese lanterns. You know, they're like these mini hot air balloons that are, you know, let off for good luck, you know. And that was the explanation for what people saw. They were flying in formation over the city, these Chinese lanterns. And what it comes down to is we're tired of these lame explanations. It's just getting old. The weather balloons, the Chinese lanterns, it's just getting really old. Recently in Stevensville, Texas, there's been a lot of activity there. Really exciting things going on there. Several of the locals and law enforcement officers have reported seeing a craft longer than the size of 3 football fields, huge, blackening out the sky that it's been so huge. And they're comparing it to the Phoenix Lights. If you're all familiar with what happened in Arizona and the Phoenix Lights back in '97, they had similar sightings like that over the city where, you know, the majority of the population saw it. There are films of it. And some of the witnesses that have been coming forward in Texas about what they saw and what they experienced, they're being harassed, they're being threatened, they're being called by military officials trying to get them to conform to their story, which they completely changed. At first they said that they didn't have jets in the area, okay? People saw jets in the area chasing the craft, and the military says, no, we didn't have any jets in the area. And then as this story started getting a lot more publicity, well, they did. Then they did have jets in the area. And, you know, people are just getting tired of this. And their explanation for a craft the size of 3 football fields was the jets. So, come on, you know. The reporter that first broke this story, Angela Joyner, she's becoming almost famous now. What happened with her is just really interesting. She was continuing, because this is a really small town, and she was continuing to dig deeper about the witnesses being harassed and more about what has been going on. And they just told her, the people that she worked for, eventually, even though they were selling more papers than ever, and, you know, people were emailing and calling by the hundreds, and as a reporter she felt a responsibility to the public to inform them about what was going on. Well, the people at the paper told her just to cut it. We know we're going to pull the plug on this, and we're not going to talk about this anymore, even though there was still a lot more stuff going on related to the UFO activity. And she got so frustrated that she ended up giving her 2 weeks notice, and they just fired her right there. They confiscated her computer and her Rolodex and treated her like a criminal. So she's been interviewed on Coast to Coast, and actually I think they have her scheduled at the X conference coming up here in DC, so I'll know more then. But it's just gotten a lot of exposure. And another thing that's been happening, there have been some really interesting lights in the sky, not just the craft, but they have been seeing out by their airport some incredible lights in the sky, and it seems to be some form of symbol or symbolic communication. And I'll show you a clip of this here. Let me see here. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Okay. Oh gosh, I'm sorry guys. I thought this was gonna start. I don't know why this isn't doing this. Let me see, Kay. Are you gonna go? Oh gosh, you guys, I'm sorry. I don't know why this isn't working.
Looks good to us.
Well, it's a whole clip. I'm sorry. I don't know why this isn't working. Let me just escape this just for a second and see if I can. Here, you know what? I'm sorry. It's gonna.
Is that your van?
No, I have a van like that actually, but it's not the actual one. Let's see if we can go. Oh gosh, guys.
The slideshow's pretty good.
You know what? Let me. Oh, is it showing? Okay, good. There. Okay. But these were actually huge. I mean, even though that they look smaller, they're you know, pretty big in the sky, and it went on for a really long time. This is just a simplified clip of this. There has been a contactee. His name's Jim Sparks. I've been following his story for years, and what's unique about Jim's story, and I believe that he's a very credible and honest man, what's unique about his experience is that he's been allowed to consciously remember everything that's happened during his contact experiences, where a lot of other people have fragments and just, you know, missing time or just a small fragment here or there of what they remember. And Jim, during his contact experiences, was taught a three-dimensional language that is, it's like a form of symbols, and he believes that these symbols are what he was taught. And what he says about this is that the flashing symbols are a method of getting information from ET to ET or ET to human in a really fast way with tremendous amounts of data in really short periods of time, and then it's able to be retained. So this, I believe, is more than just lights in the sky. There's seems to be a lot more to that. One thing, it could be possible that these sightings are getting more attention than usual because they've happened so close to the Bush family ranch. If you look up, you can see the Stephenville up there in the left-hand corner, and then you go down, and the white space, the white circle around the ranch, is the restricted airspace over the Bush ranch, and you can obviously see how close it is to Stephenville. So that could very well be why these sightings are getting so much attention. It's just a theory, but it's real close to the family ranch. Shortly after the increase of the sightings after the first of the year, there have been several sources that have come forward claiming that a secret meeting occurred February the 12th in the New York office of the United Nations concerning this recent increase in UFO activity. Now, there's been some controversy over whether this meeting happened, but my intuition says absolutely. Absolutely. It's a real common theme for disinformation to be put out there when they want to confuse the public, you know, these people who are trying to suppress this. So it's real common for, you know, people to come forward, and then there's other sources that try to debunk it. So this is a real common theme about this. But what seems to have happened is that there's just been so much increase in activity that these people want to know what's going on. And apparently, I think 30 nations at least were represented there. And it looks like they're leading up or allowing and agreeing on a policy to allow this information to be leaked out into the public in stages, so that when the actual event happens, that the truth is disclosed, that we're not alone in the universe, that people will be prepared. They won't be upset and freaking out. So this seems to be why this meeting happened. Now, another thing that's really exciting about this meeting is that the reports were that it's looking like they are going to announce this as a benevolent presence. I could not have said that at this time last year. At this time last year, it was looking like the powers that be may try to make this a scary thing, you know, a threat from outer space, which we've heard Ronald Reagan, even back to the Reagan administration, talking about this. A threat from outer space was his exact words. I don't remember the exact whole speech, but he did reference that. And what seems to be happening is that they're not going to be able to do that because other nations are, you know, they're just not wanting that. And another theory that I have about this is the human consciousness seems to be raising, and things seem to be changing. And I just wonder if, because the consciousness is raising, that they can't go forward with this negativity any longer. And that's really exciting to see. So if it ever does come out that this is a threat, I just don't buy it. I think it's a lie. I think it's a tactic to scare us and probably an agenda to move forward with this so-called one world government. And if you're not familiar with that, do your research on it. That's a whole nother topic. But you know, it seems that they're trying to put this one world government in order, and I do not believe that it's for the best of humanity at all whatsoever. So if it ever comes out that this is a negative thing, do your research, because I don't buy it. At least, you know, that's my opinion. Also, statements from the Japanese defense minister have been made over how Japan would respond to extraterrestrials appearing over Japanese airspace that display a peaceful intent. And it appears that nation states are moving forward in developing public policy on how to respond to extraterrestrials showing up. Here in the United States, we have Dr. Michael Salla, if you have ever followed his work. He is the exopolitics guy, and what he's done with his exopolitics project is he's developing a protocol that will be taught, and he's trying to even get this into the universities, but a protocol that will be taught for how to approach this scenario in a peaceful way that's best for everyone. So these things are being put together. The presidential candidates, during the debates, we had candidate Dennis Kucinich. Did you guys get to see that? Where they actually asked him during the debates about the UFO question. You didn't get to see it. What did you? I heard something on the news. Yeah, I tried to get a clip of it so I could show you guys, but I just wasn't able to download a decent clip of it. But what happened during the debates, and you know, these are watched, you know, everyone's watching that is interested in politics. They ask him, quote unquote, the godmother of your daughter, Shirley MacLaine, writes in her new book that you sighted a UFO over her home in Washington State, that you found the encounter extremely moving, that it was a triangular craft, silent and hovering, and that you felt a connection to your heart and heard directions in your mind. And they went on to ask him if this had happened, and he admitted it. He said yes. And of course, people started chuckling because we have a more conservative environment here. Immediately, people started the laughing. But he did so well. I mean, immediately, he just bounced right back in and said, you know, that President Jimmy Carter had a sighting and talked publicly about it, which he did. And he also made a joke, I have to add this in, but he said that he also believed that more people in the United States have reported seeing UFOs than he believes that would approve of the Bush administration, which is 14%. Sorry guys, I have to put that in. So that went over pretty good, but you know, that's a big deal to have that in the debates. So after withdrawing from the debates, Kucinich was quoted in a speech given in his hometown. I told the truth no matter how unpopular or inconvenient, because no matter how long it takes, the truth really will set us free. And in my opinion, I'm sure that he was referencing a lot of things, but in my opinion, I think he was really strongly referencing disclosure. That's my opinion about it. Now, there's some interesting things happening with Hillary. If she is elected into office, now whether she will admit to this or talk about it, she would have to admit to it because there's proof. But whether she'll actually be willing and open to talk about it is a different story. But there have been documents acquired under the Freedom of Information Act proving that she has extensive knowledge about this, about extraterrestrial life. And I've got all of this information on my website. If you guys want to do your own research, you can, when I reference these things, you can go to my website and there's a link. It's link UFO presentation links, and you can get all of the information. And again, I encourage you guys not to just take my word for it, but to go out and do your own research about this. But the Paradigm Research Group placed these documents on the internet. Now there's like 900 pages, so if you have a lot of time. But it took them 3 years to get these documents also. So the researcher that filed for these, Grant Cameron, he's on it with this stuff. He does this kind of stuff all the time. And he knew it was going to take a long time, but they finally came through. And these documents confirm the effort by billionaire Lawrence Rockefeller to persuade President Bill Clinton during his presidency to begin releasing to the public government-held information pertaining to the UFO phenomena and extraterrestrial life, and also to provide amnesty to government employees wishing to come forward and testify regarding relevant issues about this. And I'll talk a little bit more about amnesty in just a minute. But the Rockefellers' move to effect disclosure lasted from 1993 to 1996. And researchers that have been following this or were aware of this effort commonly refer to this as the Rockefeller Initiative. Now, at the time they thought it was a failure, but it's not, because it's becoming full circle now, even though it's been a matter of years. And because they have these documents now, and Hillary's running for president, so if she gets it, I mean, we have the proof, and, you know, hopefully she'll answer to what it's all about. But the Rockefeller Initiative included strategy meetings of researchers held at the Rockefellers Ranch in Colorado, meetings between Rockefeller and President Clinton and Hillary at his ranch, and there we have them moseying along, talking about the Rockefeller Initiative. The commissioning of numerous reports and papers, including an extensive study titled Unidentified Flying Objects Briefing Document, The Best Evidence Available, document requests and searches within the Clinton administration, an important symposium titled When Cosmic Cultures Meet, and considerable correspondence between public and private entities, and there's a lot more in that, but it's all there, so, you know, check it out if you feel led. While the recent questions posed to presidential candidates during the debates and campaign stops is encouraging, it is and must be the beginning of extensive queries to all candidates regarding their knowledge of and intentions toward what is easily the most important issue of this or any other time in history, hands down. But if you guys want to check this out, Paradigm Research link, and they have such an incredible archive of just unbelievable stuff if you're interested in checking this out. And I have the link on my website. So I want to go back to the amnesty topic here for a minute. Because there is so much corruption that's surrounded this, people have lost their lives to keep this secret. It's believed that amnesty is probably going to be the best way, and Jim Sparks is another one. During his contacts with non-human intelligence, that was another message that they gave him, that amnesty would be the best way to do this. And it has to do with the technology. And there are extraterrestrial technologies that can help us with these environmental problems and a whole lot more. But these ET technologies are not just in the hands of extraterrestrials, but they're in the hands of human beings. And these black budget, above top secret organizations and also classifications mean that these technologies, they're not getting out to the public. And there is technology that is so phenomenal that it could draw matter out of water, meaning it could draw pollutants out of water. There's so much more. They have ways of taking pollution out of the atmosphere, and they have technology that can help the wildlife and the rainforest and even anti-aging. I'm all about that. So. That's what we have going on, but these black budget programs, they don't want this information out because you can't make money off of free energy and these kind of technologies. You know, it's a shame. So according to sources, some of these people involved in these black budget programs, they want this technology because, again, we have the light and the dark, you know, and some in the gray, they don't care. But there are sources that want this information out there. And again, you have to remember, some of these people that are involved, they're just doing their assignments. They've been recruited to do this, and they're doing their job. And then when they get involved and they realize what is actually going on, they want to talk about it and get this stuff released. And these organizations also work above and beyond the law. There's no law for them, and they also have unlimited financial resources. So, you know, these people are up against, you know, some pretty tough opposition, but amnesty so that these people won't be prosecuted is probably going to be the best way, because there's a lot of people out there that want to fry them in the frying pan for what's been happening, but that's not the answer. It's already happened. It's in the past. Let it be what it is, and let's move forward and allow these people to tell the truth and come out without having to be worried about being prosecuted. And in my opinion, I think that's probably going to be the best and maybe only way that we're going to make some headway on this. The reason for the suppression of some of this technology, again, they're afraid that it's going to crash the economy. It's about the social, economic, and political order of the world, and there's belief that it'll be greatly altered by some of those inside in power. And if you look through history, the basis of power and control on the earth has to do with resource control. It really does, unfortunately. But some of these individuals in authority realize that contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations would diminish their power because they are so spiritually and technologically advanced that it could change the world drastically. Another technology that has come about, actually, many witnesses say from back engineering spacecraft, the real deal spacecraft, is advanced propulsion systems that would allow for anti-gravity, silent above surface travel. And these systems, they don't pollute, they don't use fuel. And think about the money that could be saved from all of the money that's spent on the roads. Think about that. And these technologies already exist. So if we continue abusing the environment and the earth, the earth may not be able or willing to sustain life for humans. That's just my opinion. Any technology that would threaten the economy, because we go back into the free energy, is considered a matter of national security. Okay? Any inventor who comes forward with these technologies are considered a threat to national security. Their inventions are seized, and this has been going on for God knows how long, and their patents are taken due to the secrecy order. This is Title 35 United States Code 1952, sections 181 through 188, if you want to check it out. And many of these inventors are harassed, and in some circumstances, these people have lost their lives to silence them. And at the moment, and there's probably more by now that we don't even know about, but at least 3,000 devices or applications under the patent, they've been branded as security threat and put under wraps by the secrecy order. So they're just sitting there, and they've been, we've had them for a long, long time. And viewing this technology as a threat to national security has no substance. It can be introduced gradually in a way that would not crash the economy. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It can happen in 10, 20, 30-year increments. And that would probably be enough to save the planet from an environmental catastrophe. And this comes directly from Paul Hellyer, who was the former Canadian Defense Minister. He's a real big advocate of the disclosure also. There are witnesses that are working and have worked for the NSA that talk about guarding the economy more than anything else. So it's just an interesting tidbit of information. But what's cool about this is what seems to be happening are the inventors, a lot of these inventors that are doing this, they're aware of what's been going on in the past. So they're just publishing their information for free. They're putting it on the internet, or it's here, you can have it, so that it doesn't have to go through a patent process and then they get their head served on a platter, So that's a really exciting thing that's happening. They are seeming to be doing this. And there's also a new energy Congress. And I've got the link to that website on my site. You can get that through there. But there's a new energy Congress that's working really hard. They have the list of the top 100 up-and-coming technologies that are clean, renewable, environmentally safe, affordable, and they have those on listed on there, so you can go and read about them, and there's some pretty cool stuff on there. Also to the Orion Project, Dr. Greer, which I talked about earlier through the Sea SETI organization, is the founder of this. And Dr. Greer has an umbrella of protection because they tried to kill him. These covert government organizations tried to kill him, and they couldn't do it. They were successful in killing his partner that he worked very closely with on the Sea SETI and Disclosure Project. So he has so many inside connections that with these people who want this information out, that they provide him with an umbrella of protection. And so what he's doing through the Orion Project for some of these inventors is providing financial backing for their inventions and for their technology, and also the umbrella of protection. So if you guys donate, I donate to it, but it's a very, very good cause. Even if it's $5, you know, it adds up with a group of people. It's a really good cause. In 2007, we had the second Disclosure Project conference at the National Press Club. The first one was held back in May of 2001, and that was the Dr. Greer organization. And the second one, the first one, it did get some attention, but not near as much as the second one did. But Dr. Greer definitely got the ball rolling for it. The second Disclosure Project, and what they did was they gathered all of these witnesses that came forward and told their stories. You can go online and Google it, and I think you can just watch all of it for free. If you Google Disclosure Project, there's probably a bunch of them that will come up, and check it out, because these witnesses, you know, they put their necks on the line to get this information to us, and I just doubt very seriously that they're going to put themselves in these positions, or their families, to tell a bunch of lies. You know, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. But what they had is just an entire group of very credible witnesses who had a political, military, corporate background involving these projects that had to do with UFO and extraterrestrial presence. And they told their stories. There were pilots. I mean, it's endless. There's actually, from the first disclosure, there's also a published book too. I have that, and it's just got some great information, because they couldn't, within the time period that they had, they couldn't have all of the witnesses, because there were hundreds of them. They didn't have time to have each one of them talk. So there's more information in the disclosure book if you're interested. But the second disclosure project at the press club was, I think, probably a little bit more successful, because it did get coverage on the Larry King live show before it happened. Did any of you guys get to see that? No? Check it out on the Paradigm Research website if you feel led, because something really interesting happened during that broadcast, because it was live. They were interviewing some of the witnesses that were going to be talking about their experiences, and he did it very respectfully. But this time, the debunker, because they always have to, play the devil's advocate, but they had this debunker on there who is a well-known debunker, and something happened to him during that broadcast. It was almost like he was in some kind of hypnotic trance. I mean, something had come over him, and he just ended up looking really foolish. And that usually does not happen. Usually they're focusing on the debunker, and they're getting all the airtime, and I don't know what happened to this guy, but he's a well-known one, and I've seen him several times. I've never seen him act like that. It was really strange, so it's kind of comical. If you get a chance to check it out, do it. Another thing that's happening is some of these military personnel that have, they're retired, and they're old, they're on their deathbeds, and they've been forced to keep these things secret that they've been involved in, because they're dying. They have nothing left to lose. They're talking, and they're making notarized statements, for people to have. So that's another thing that's been happening recently too. In December of 2007, there was a 30-hour landing in Mexico. It was about 100 miles east of Acapulco, and the entire community saw it. I mean, the majority of the community, because it was 30 hours. Now, attempts to take videos or pictures failed due to distortions from the object. People were reporting that their eyes were burning, and they were having some problems. It could have just been the energy that was emitting from the craft, but it landed in an area that was only approachable for hiking for a number of hours or using an all-terrain vehicle. So it was reported, but I don't think there are any video footage or photos that I was able to find. And even if they were able to get close to it, which I doubt that they were, if the people in the community, and this was up on a mountain, were having distortions and problems, with their eyes, it probably wouldn't have been humanly possible to get close up enough of it to get footage from it. So there was also another landing in Brazil, and this was witnessed by several people, and this one left burned vegetation behind, and that was in January of this year. In Ohio, well, actually, let's go to Mexico. In Mexico City, there's been some incredible things going on there. It's so common for them to have sightings in broad daylight, 500, 1,000 of them in the air at a time, and this is happening frequently there. And it makes me wonder if the consciousness of the people there, they're just so accepting of it that it manifests for them. But I've got some footage. There is a reporter, his name's Jaime Musan. I have a link for him on my website as well. Watch his presentations, they're incredible. He's a reporter in Mexico, and he has a show that would be comparable like to a 2020 or a Dateline like what we have here. And he's able to openly talk about this stuff in the press and the media. And so he's had an interacting rapport with the community and asked them to send their footage. At one time he received over 20,000 responses of footage from over the city, and just some incredible footage. One thing, let's go to, actually I'm gonna go to this one here. This one's a little easier to see. Let me see if I can. But this is footage from Jaime Musan's presentation. You can see it a little bit better here in a minute.
In a moment you will see how all these objects right now.
You step aside.
Oh, I'm sorry, sure.
Okay, to explain that. I don't think there is a video with more objects in the sky ever.
So that's one clip. There's another one here too that I have. This is an interesting one. This is some type of it keeps morphing, but these are being seen more frequently in Mexico City also. You're getting excited.
Yo ni que de dónde salieron esferas. El ojo es casi invisible. Ahí está el blanco, mira. ¿Qué es eso, Coquis? Gracias.
Mira, hay otro allá a la derecha.
Pero ¿sabes qué? Se mueven como lombrices, Mina. Y no son globos,
Mira otro acá atrás, Arturo.
Oye, pues esto ya es una invasión de Eva misma.
Mira, aquí viene uno aquí atrás. Acá hay otro como globo, mira. Aquí hay otro.
Ah, está soltando esferas, espérate. Este sí está echando esferas.
So that's, these kind of things are being seen more commonly in Mexico. Now the next clip that I want to show you, I wish that it could be a little bit more in focus, but it's, I wanted to put it in here. There is a gentleman, his name is Pedro Avila, and he is one of the top photographers, or he catches all kinds of video. He's confined to a wheelchair, and he is in his bedroom all the time that has just a window. So he's watching the skies constantly, and he's one of the people, he gets incredible footage for Jaime all the time. But one day he had an experience that was, it lasted like a half an hour, and it was just these luminous beings in the sky just playing and morphing around. And it's hard to see it, but I wanted to show you guys this because it's just so beautiful. If you can see this. It's hard to see, but I'm sorry.
Many years ago, look how they move, fly, play.
What it seems to be a group of luminous figures or luminous bodies with human shape interacting. According to Pedro Avila, they were like dancing together, like playing together. And he was completely surprised. Something never seen before.
The video lasts for half an hour.
Yes, a very long video.
And then
So it's I wish we could get a little bit better of it, but I just thought that was awesome. That was really awesome. So those are some things happening in Mexico City. And another thing about like the hundreds of them in the sky all at one time, and that's in airspace, you know, it's air traffic space. There's never been any accidents. So I thought that was really cool too. In Ohio, there have been some incredible sightings around Lake Erie. If you go to YouTube, you can see some of those clips. Beautiful, incredible sightings around Lake Erie. In 2003 and 2004, here in Ohio, we had crop formations around the sacred mounds. I don't know if you guys knew that, but there is this one up here. I'm sorry if you can't see. That was the serpent mound, the eye-looking one. The second one beside that is, I believe, was at the Sipe Mound. And then the bottom one, that was at the Miamisburg Mound in 2004. So we had crop formations here in Ohio. And we don't know what crop formations are, but they seem to be giving us messages. So I think that it's something that, you know, we need to pay attention to this phenomena. And Serpent Mound, they're starting to associate Serpent Mound now with Stonehenge, because they seem to both be associated with the constellations of Draco and the Little Dipper. So they're starting to associate these two together. And the mounds, I believe, were meant to be seen from an aerial view. I don't know if you guys have been to Serpent Mound, but if you haven't, you need to go. It's just an incredible experience there. It's in southern Ohio. In 1960, when astronaut Alan Shepard orbited the Earth in Mercury Freedom, he picked up a beeping from the Earth, and at first he thought it was from NASA, but it turned out that it was coming from the Serpent Mound. They're picking up the Serpent Mound in space. I know. So, you know, there's definitely something significant to this place, and it is apparently the strongest energy point anywhere in the United States. And there's a no-flight zone over that area, apparently, because the airplane gauges are unreliable when, you know, so credible sources have said that it's a no-fly zone. And the area around the Serpent Mound was called Little Egypt by the Tibetan monks, and then it was termed Ohio. For the Shawnee, the word Ohio means place of beginnings. And the Tibetan people have also have a word for Ohio. It means Dharma, the teachings. So we have a lot of cool things going on here in Ohio. So Ohio's not such a bad place to be. a lot of great things going on. And some other things that have been happening, and this is in the not so recent past, but certain Native American elders now are coming forward and speaking about their connections to the people of the stars. And they used to keep this oral tradition only sacred for their people, but they're indicating that the time is now for anyone who wants to learn from them. But they talk about the star visitors and how they've interacted with them, and that they've always been among us, and they believe may have had a hand in creating us or altering our evolution. So the Native American elders are coming out and speaking about this publicly now, where before it was kept under wraps. Almost every week now, planet hunters are discovering new worlds and far reaches of the galaxy. And UFO and extraterrestrial interaction is nothing new to humanity. There seems to be a connection between the Sumerian culture, the Syrians, the Babylonians, and alien civilization. In my opinion, activity of this kind has been referenced several times in the Bible and also in the Vedic scriptures. History clearly indicates that UFOs have been a part of our past and are still prominent today. The Vedas and other texts refer to aeronautics, spaceships, flying machines, ancient astronauts, and these are diagrams from the Vedas that have been interpreted, but it's technology. I mean, what are these doing in the Vedas, you know? It's interesting. So they reference beautiful chariot, which arrived shining, a wonderful divine car that sped through the air. In another passage, there's mention of a chariot being seen sailing overhead like a moon. I believe one of the clearest biblical references is in the book of Ezekiel. It's a short book, but if you guys get a chance to read it, it references similar things like what's talked about in the Vedic scriptures. The book of Ezekiel is a really good one. We have seen UFOs in religious artwork. If you look at this, you can see behind the Madonna's shoulder some type of a craft or aerial phenomena going on. And this is a 14th century fresco, and it seems to indicate some type of a religious involvement between UFO and the appearance of the Christ child. You know, we don't know what it is, but it definitely, I think, is deserving of attention. And here's another one at the crucifixion. If you look on either side, the top one's a little hard to see, but if you look on either side, there seems to be some type of flying craft with intelligent life in them. So, you know, we don't know what this is, but it deserves attention, in my opinion. Now, why are they putting these things in there? So, here are these skulls were found in Peru, and they've been studied extensively, and the conclusion is that the anomalous shape of these skulls was not due to binding techniques, which was done. It was a practice that was done in certain cultures, and the binding was done to reshape the skull to apparently resemble royalty. But binding cannot change the cranial structure or the capacity of the skulls, and the cranial capacity in these skulls is much larger than a regular human skull. So there's something very unusual about these skulls that have been found. These are interesting here. These are found in Iraq, dating back to 4000 BC, and if you go back through history in many, many cultures, there are mythological references to reptilian humanoids. I mean, you can find it. And these statues, they look like a human structure, but they don't look human to me. And, you know, these are really old. So I find those to be interesting. The Dogon tribe had extensive knowledge of the Sirius star system. They had maps. They knew all about the star system before it was even discovered. And they claim that their knowledge came from an amphibious being that was sent to the Earth from Sirius for the benefit of mankind. And they have had extensive knowledge of this. These are more Sumerian artifacts. And one thing that we'll begin to see through the next few slides are these interesting eye pieces or eyewear that they have, and almost helmet-like objects seem to be a theme. And this is from all different cultures. This is the Dogon tribe statue of a resemblance of the being that they say gave them their information. And it's kind of basic, but it doesn't look completely human to me. It looks a lot more exaggerated. These are from Japan. Again, we have the unusual eyewear and headgear, and also we start to see a theme of these suits. So that's another interesting thing. I'm going to pass this around because this is a little bit difficult to see from this picture, but if you look at this picture here, this statue, if you want to have a look at it, this is called the Lady with the Vase, and it dates back to roughly 1500 BC, 2000 BC. And this statue, what's unique about it is if you followed Zecharia Sitchin's work, he had the knowledge and transcribed several Sumerian clay tablets that were unearthed, and he has this whole theory about the Nephilim culture. If you want to ever check out his work, I think it's very credible. But Zechariah, the interesting thing about this statue, and this is a life-size statue, but what's going on, her helmet is called Shugara. I believe I'm doing my best to pronounce that correctly. But what Shugara means, according to Zecharia Sitchin, that have translated these tablets, her helmet called Shugara translates to that which makes go far into the universe. And she also seems to have some kind of a backpack or breathing apparatus on her back. So you can see it a little bit more clearly in the picture, but that's another interesting artifact that has been found. Several cave drawings. If you look at these are from Utah. Again, we have the interesting suits, the interesting eyes, anomalous looking beings. This is from Italy. It looks almost like some type of astronaut or space depiction to me in this picture. This is from Africa, and this particular picture is called The Great Martian Gods. And again, we have the suit thing going on. This is from Australia, and this picture over here is kind of similar to the other one with the suit and the around the head, the unusual things going on around the head. So these kind of things are popping up in all different cultures all over the world. This is an interesting one. These mummies were found in Egypt, and they were put in the larger coffins, but they were actually they were a lot smaller. And if you look, their skulls seem to be unusually large, and their hands seem to be, and arms seem to be a little longer. But I found this hieroglyph of this hand. I mean, it looks like a hand, but the fingers look really long to me. And, I just question, why was that put in Egyptian artwork? It raises questions. So, I don't know why, but it raises question that I think we need to pay attention to. Nefertiti and Pharaoh Akhenaten. There's theory that Akhenaten, that his unusual appearance was due to Marfan syndrome, but I just question that. I don't know. I think he's otherworldly. And Nefertiti, the Egyptian artwork is especially made to be as close to the possible image. So they try to make it as real as possible. But Nefertiti over here, look at the shape of her skull. It's very long. And their children, and the artwork there in the middle, their necks are really, long and slender, and their skulls seem to be an unusual shape. So those are some interesting things. Oh, in Peru, we have the Nazca lines. And this is over a territory. It's a huge, all of these inscriptions in the earth, obviously meant to be seen from an aerial view. And it's just over this huge plain of land. and there are all these different depictions that are inscribed in the earth. This is one of them. This one's called the Ancient Astronaut, so we get the big eyes again, the unusual looking heads, and so these kind of things are going on all over the world, and I think that we need to pay attention to these things. There's a plate from Nepal. It looks like a disc, and we have the unusual little man looking on there. We have Cydonia and the face on Mars, if you guys have ever looked into that. That's another interesting thing to look into. I'd like to talk about crop circles just for a minute. No one knows what they are or where they come from. Regardless, they seem to have some important messages for us. They're not a new phenomenon. They've been reported back as far as 1678, and in recent years they've multiplied enormously. Since the early 1990s, there have been over 10,000 reported, and they appear to be more than just art. They do. They appear to be more than just art. They portray great mystical symbols, things that have to do with the Mayan calendar, pictures that are, depictions of the Mayan calendar. Some have to do with DNA. Some have to do with other galaxies. Some are Sanskrit letters, asteroid belts, eclipses. This one here, in my opinion, it looks like the human chakra system. And what I thought was awesome about this is the focus on the heart and the third eye and the crown. I think they're trying to tell us something here to get out of those lower chakras and get up into the higher ones. What else do we have here? Oh, this is a message of DNA. These formations were found in the same field. And if you look at the face, it almost looks like, I don't know, maybe like part of a feminine face and part of a male face. But some believe that the DNA message, it's been looked at by several scientists that know more about this. Some believe that it has to do with human DNA and possible extraterrestrial DNA, maybe indicating hybrid. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but these are some of the conclusions that have been drawn from that formation. So that's pretty interesting. I think these messages are more than just art, or there's a lot more. This one's called the Tesla Circle. And there are many that believe that this formation is very close to an invention that Tesla had made that had to do with free energy that, obviously we've had for a long, long time. So they're trying to tell us about this. Now, this one here is a really interesting one. This one has binary code. And the message, if you look at the face, you can see the face in the square, but then over to the circle, there's a binary code message in that, and it's been interpreted by experts from different parts of the world. None of them knew each other. They all came to the same conclusion, that the message was, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. So they're definitely, I believe, trying to tell us something. These are Hermetic medicinal symbols. They're beautiful. So this is the Mayan this is a Mayan calendar symbol, and I'm definitely not an expert on the Mayan calendar, but what I think is happening here is the Mayan calendar seems to indicate a new era of human consciousness that will dawn in the late 2012. I believe that humanity is already experiencing this. In my practice, as a professional medium, and I've been doing this for a long time, I've seen a huge shift in my practice in the last couple years. More people from the mainstream who would probably have laughed about getting intuitive information or spiritual information beyond their traditional sources. They're just not getting what they need from their traditional sources any longer, and they're looking for a lot more. And this is exciting to me. It's very exciting. So I'm seeing the change myself. Okay, let's go on about the Mayan calendar. I don't believe, there's a lot of speculation that the Mayan calendar is going to mean the end of the world, and some people are predicting gloom and doom, but I so don't believe that's what this is about at all. Not at all. I believe it could be the end of time as we know it, and evolution and consciousness, spirituality. And according to the most recent discoveries now available, the timeline encoded in the Mayan calendar reveals imminent global destruction is not the likely focus of these final shifts towards the 2012, towards the creation's plan. And it isn't to say that there may not be some challenging times ahead. I mean, we're seeing some earth changes, we're seeing some economic upheaval, but I think this is all in line with just a whole nother paradigm coming through. So, it might be a little uncomfortable for a while, but it's ultimately leading to something so much better, a new world. So our government already has proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. I want to show one more slide before I go on to that. I forgot. In the crop formations, the ones that are real, because there are hoaxes, but the ones that are real, the crop can be harvested because it's not harmed, even though it's been, lying in this formation. There was a bird's nest found in this particular crop formation, and none of the eggs were harmed. Isn't that awesome? I know. So they can, they can be harvested. So I thought that was another interesting thing too. But our government has already admitted to belief in extraterrestrials. From 1969 to 1991, it was against the law for any United States citizen to have contact with any extraterrestrial life form. In 1969, at the time we started space travel, landing on the moon, a law was created in order to protect us against the potential danger of exposure from any alien life form. This law is called the Extraterrestrial Exposure Law, and it is Federal Regulation Title 14, Section 1211. This law, generally speaking, says that if we should come into contact with any life form from off of our world, we could be subject to quarantine, fines, and/or imprisonment. Okay, so there's a law on the books. Where are they going to put this on there if there's no such thing? I bet it baffles me. Whatever. So anyways, this law has been reversed, I believe, since 1991. It hasn't been removed. Reversed means that it can be reinstated at any time. So hopefully we'll have a new law, the law of open contact, instead of the exposure law. Extraterrestrial vehicles became very prominent after the development of the first nuclear weapons when we began exploring space. Numerous credible military officials have testified on multiple events of these vehicles neutralizing missiles and shutting down electric systems that launch nuclear missiles and disabling them. So if they wanted to hurt us, they wouldn't be keeping us from destroying ourselves by neutralizing our missiles. It just makes no sense. One incident that was a big one, this was at a Nevada nuclear test site where a nuclear bomb had already been detonated during an above ground test, and they moved the troops to a so-called safe place to watch the bomb go off. I wonder if any of these people are still alive. But what happened was the bomb was, there was a craft that came down and landed right next to their project, and extraterrestrials came out. This was from several witnesses, and extraterrestrials got out and laid on the ground right beside the bomb, and apparently it did end up going off. You can find this in Linda Moulton Howe's information, High Strangeness 2, I think. But apparently it did end up going off because they didn't know how to reverse detonate. So the reason for this interference from extraterrestrials regarding nuclear weapons is because it's not only devastating to our planet, but it affects other dimensions in the entire galaxy. All extraterrestrial races that the government has had physical contact with warned us against the use of nuclear weapons, especially in space. And not only because they're devastating to our planets, but they interfere with their worlds, the worlds that we're not even aware of. So they have to interfere. It's beyond free will anymore. They have to interfere. And what seems to be happening now is that they've given up on approaching the governments. They seem to be approaching just the average guy walking down the street, the extraterrestrials, and giving them messages about what's been going on. But I would like to talk a little bit about the history of these covert government groups, how they came about, and also how they have infiltrated religious establishments. This goes back to the Eisenhower administration, and Eisenhower knew and tried to warn us of the dangers of these covert organizations. During his farewell address, he was quoted saying, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals so that the security and liberty may prosper together." So he was trying to warn us about all of this. And what's interesting about Eisenhower's story, in February of 1954, he was on a vacation in Palm Springs, California, and he just went missing. It was reported. People were freaking out. They didn't know what happened to him. And when he emerged from this disappearance, it was given to the press that he had an emergency dental situation, which people very much questioned. It was an alleged dental situation, and then they brought this dentist in to the church service that said that he was the dentist that took care of this emergency. But there were many witnesses that have talked openly about what really happened. What happened was an event that was probably the first contact. Okay. He was taken to Edwards Air Force Base. At the time it was called something different, but it's now called Edwards Air Force Base. And apparently they set up these meetings and they brought different people in to see how they would react to the situation. And so there was a gentleman, his name's Gerald Light. He was apparently at this meeting, the first open contact. And another thing that's interesting too is that Steven Spielberg, for his movies, for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, apparently had access to files at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it's portrayed to be fiction, these movies, but I think that it's real. Okay, so that's another interesting thing that you can find out there if you do your research. But Gerald Light, he was a very educated man, very respected in his community, and he talked about what went on there and verifies that this meeting did happen, that there was a landing, there was communication. And another person that Light named as a person who was present at this, and this is how this infiltrated into religion, was Cardinal McIntyre. He was the cardinal of the one of the Catholic churches in LA, and he was actually appointed the first cardinal of the Western United States by Pope Pius in 1952, and apparently he was there at these meetings. And after the event happened, he flew to Rome and talked about what happened with the Pope at the Vatican and informed them there. And after that, apparently the Pope decided to found the Vatican Intelligence Agency to find out any information about extraterrestrials and how they interact with the American government. So they wanted to know what was going on too. And one of my favorite disclosure witnesses, Monsignor Corrado Balducci, Father Balducci, he is an insider close to the former Pope. He's a Vatican theologian. And they have given him blessing, and actually he would have to have permission to do this, but he goes around the world now and he talks to the public about the Catholic Church's belief in extraterrestrials. And he does. I met him, and it was just, he's a phenomenal man. He's in his 80s, and he talks to people about this. And he says we have nothing to be afraid of, that they exist. And many in the Vatican know that they exist. And again, we have these dueling forces, the darkness that doesn't want it to come out because of power control, and then the light forces that want it to come out, and Father Balducci is definitely one of those light forces. But he talked about the Catholic Church's belief in extraterrestrials, and he says that they are neither angels nor devils. They are probably more spiritually evolved than us, he says. And he referenced the universe several times, the word universe in the Bible, and he went on to say that the universe means all of God's creation. And actually the Catholic Church has a holiday around All Saints' Day where they honor all of creation, he says, including extraterrestrials. And he says that everything exists within the universe is in the creation of the divine, and that there are no ETs that are not part of the divine. So he says that we have nothing to be afraid of. And again, he would have to have permission from the Pope to do this. So I think the Catholic Church is preparing people too. And I don't think it's going to crash the religious systems. It'll probably change things, but I don't think people are going to go from no belief in God or no belief in our Creator. I don't see that happening. So that's another interesting thing. Father Balducci, you can find a lot of information, and you can Google him and see interviews with him. So do that if you feel led. The Vatican also, again, there are groups that don't want this out and there are groups that do, but the Vatican, let's see, hold on here. That's Father Balducci. Hi, Father. These are observatories that the Vatican has. One of them is out in Arizona on Mount Graham, and it has one of the highest powered telescopes in the world. They also have one in Rome, but this one over here, that's the Mount Graham facility in Arizona, and they're watching the skies. You better believe it. They're watching what's going on. So they have these observatories that are in full function. So President Carter tried to, well, he talked openly about, he had an experience, he had a sighting. And when he got into his presidency, he talked openly about it. And when he got into office, he wanted information about the UFOs and went to the CIA director, and he talks about this, George Bush Sr., and he was told by the director that he could not have the information and to see if he could get it from congressional research. And so Carter went on to the congressional research to try to get this information. And they in turn appointed him to an attorney who was with the Christic Institute representing a group of Jesuit priests in Washington to see if he could get information from them, because apparently they have a lot of information about this and seem to be some that may be involved, not all, but possibly may be involved in suppressing some of this information. But again, he was told not that the information didn't exist, but that they wouldn't give it to the president. So presidents and world leaders, some of these people are left out of the loop. The reason being that they do that is because if a president were asked publicly about what they knew and were so inclined to be honest, again, they go back into being afraid of, crashing the economy or panic and things like that. So they deliberately leave the presidents out of this loop. And Eisenhower, Kennedy, Carter, and Clinton were frustrated by their attempts to penetrate such projects. Bill Clinton was quoted saying, "There is a secret government within the government and I don't have control over it." So there apparently, some of these leaders that we think are in charge really aren't in charge. So that's another thing we need to look at. Another disclosure witness, and there's so many of them, I've just tried to pull from ones that really sparked my interest, but there was a naval witness in the Disclosure Project who talked about a mission that he went on in the Atlantic Ocean on a search for what were called magnetic anomalies. And this is a term that's used for underwater extraterrestrial vehicles. And a lot of people have sightings around water. A lot of people talk about seeing craft emerge into the water and come from the water also. But they were using a specially equipped nuclear submarine to search for these underwater extraterrestrial vehicles. And when they were ready to go out on their mission, this black limousine pulls up and drops off a priest in full suit to go on the mission with them. And they ended up going on their mission, and they did encounter 2 of these vehicles underwater. And the vehicles came on either side of the submarine, and it turned off their systems, so they were just suspended for a while. And when they finally did get back to their destination, when they got their power back and got back to their destination, all of the information that was gathered from that mission was given to the priest. So, they're involved. They're involved. It isn't just, it turned out to be, according to this gentleman, this witness, it turned out to be a special operation directed by the Vatican using a Navy submarine. So they're definitely involved in this, and they do have information about this. So I just found all of that to be very interesting too. I want to talk just for a moment about Star Wars and the space laws. Space laws were drafted in 1947 by the United States after the Roswell crash. I'm sure we all know about the Roswell crash. But Star Wars, which is popularly thought of as a missile defense system, is known within the military as the Space Defense Initiative. And witnesses that have been involved in this project claim that the so-called Star Wars, or National Defense System, is really a black budget project of weapons to track and target and destroy extraterrestrial vehicles. Now, it may not only solely be for that purpose, but I have seen footage of extraterrestrial vehicles or UFOs coming in the Earth atmosphere, and you can clearly see missiles being shot at them. Clearly, and that was the explanation from that was ice formations hurling through space, not missiles. You know, it's just endless. But I have seen that footage from the CSETI group, and they do have footage of that. So, you know, it's unfortunate, and it's not safe for them to come around at all the time. But many people believe that if you have a contact, it has to be a face-to-face contact, but this isn't true. If you've ever had a lucid dream, if you've ever had any type of a telepathic communication, consider yourself contacted. That's the way that they work, and it's more likely that you're going to have contact from that method rather than, you know, a full face-to-face contact. That's the way that it works. They communicate telepathically for the most part. I'm going to have to wrap up here, so I just want to, in closing, perhaps one of the beliefs that has held back the evolution of humanity is the belief that we're all separate. While each of us are individual, we are also all part of a collective consciousness that links us to all that exists. We each do have an individual path, but we have a path together as humanity as well. And we need to embrace this. And I believe that it's not only our individual responsibility, but our collective responsibility as humanity to grow spiritually and to take care of the earth that sustains life for us, because no one else can do this, and to listen to these witnesses and these people and do our research on this and find out, get to the bottom about what's really going on, and just don't take my word for it. One of my favorite quotes, Margaret Mead, "Never doubt that a small committed minority can change history. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So thank you all very much for coming this evening. I appreciate your time. Thank you.